wanted to do as a pharmacist that's practiced in retail and an owner of an independent pharmacy, oftentimes customers come in and there's problems going on with their prescriptions and they're not for sure what they're supposed to do next in that scenario. And so because I'm also an insurance expert, I wanted to come on and give you all helpful hints as to what to do the next time you go to the pharmacy and your prescription's not ready. Maybe the pharmacist told you that it needed a prior authorization or the insurance was not covering it. Whatever the case may be, I want to walk through some of the common scenarios where the insurance company may not be allowing you to get a prescription drug that you need. We're going to go over what that means, that actually means for the insurance company, what that means for you as the end user or the customer, what that means for the physician's office, and what do you do in order for you to be able to get the needed prescription drugs that you do need. Okay, so the first one is going to be around prior authorizations. So a prior authorization is simply a set of questions that the insurance company is asking your provider to answer before they will cover a particular medication, okay? So think of it as just clinical questions that they need or would like answers to. Now, oftentimes I hear people say, well, the insurance company's not my provider. They should just give me whatever the doctor prescribed for me. And I agree to a certain extent, okay? So remember, the definition of managed care or insurance is going to be healthcare delivery, meaning somebody has to deliver healthcare, your physician, the hospital, the lab, all that's healthcare delivery. But also when it comes to insurance and managed care, it is healthcare delivery plus financing. And the financing piece is administered by the insurance company, who may be paid by your employer. Maybe it's Medicare, or maybe it's a group health plan, or whatever the case may be. Your healthcare delivery has to be financed. Somebody's paying for that, so the insurance company is then given the task of how do we provide healthcare delivery that's clinically and soundly appropriate, but also do it with a limited number of dollars or the most cost-effective way possible. And one of those utilization management techniques is what we call it. It's called prior authorization. So in a prior authorization, there's clinical questions that needs to be answered. And what these clinical questions they did not come from just the insurance company say, hey, ask them if they got diabetes. They actually come from the clinical information and inserts that go with that particular drug. So none of this stuff is just off the cuff. It is literally has to be backed by clinical studies, clinical trials of that nature, okay? So I don't want you to think that the insurance company is just making this stuff up. They're supposed to do it based on clinical guidelines. All right, so prior authorization is a part of utilization management edits, okay? And we call them UM edits, utilization management. And so the prior authorization is the clinical question. So when you get to the pharmacy counter and they say, oh, your insurance says you need a prior authorization. Sometimes as a pharmacist and technician, we group all that stuff together. All we know is your insurance company didn't cover it. Maybe it's not on the formulary. Maybe it requires a step therapy. Maybe it was you're asking for too many and it's quantity limit. Maybe it truly is a prior authorization. What your step one needs to be if you're at the pharmacy counter is ask the pharmacist or the technician specifically what the reject message says. Okay, so you want to get reject message clarification. And you want them to tell you, did it say a prior authorization required? Did it say I need a quantity limit? Did it say step therapy? So you want to make sure that you know exactly what the reject message was that was returned to the pharmacy. Number two, if you're at the pharmacy counter, they're going to probably tell you, we faxed your doctor or we called your doctor to let them know. Do not let that be the end be all, okay? Physicians get a lot of faxes. All insurance companies have some sort of prior authorization processes in place, so all the pharmacies are usually faxing or calling over. This does not start the process just because the pharmacy sent over the paperwork. Somebody at the physician's office has to pick something up and do something with it. So the second thing I want you to do is do not take what the pharmacist says, even if they did fax it. Just take that with a grain of salt, and I want you to go home and you're going to call your insurance company. And the reason you're going to call the insurance company is because you want to know what the next steps are going to be. And then after that, you're going to call your doctor's office, okay? And so the insurance company is going to say, hey, yes, Ms. Jones, it requires a prior authorization. We just need your doctor to fill out some forms. Depending on what kind of health plan you're in, they may already offer to call your doctor's office and get this process started. If they do not, you're going to have to call the physician's office and get that started on your behalf. If they do offer at the insurance company, tell them, yes, I want you to go ahead and get the process started, but I also want you to call the physician's office to make sure that the call was made, make sure they understand that you're in the loop, that you are without your medications, and you need them to complete these forms in order for you to be able to get the needed prescription drugs. All right, and so that's the 3 things you can do if you're already at the pharmacy counter. However, if you want to be proactive, because now you have listened to this video and you know some tips and to avoid some of these things at the pharmacy counter, what I want you to do is, if you're actually at the doctor's office, some of the things that you can do then, if you're already at the doctor's office, carry your formulary or your list of drugs with you. Not all plans may not give you this formulary document. It may not come into a printed book. Maybe it's online. There's a link that you have to go through. Maybe you actually have to call and figure out what the formulary is. Whatever the case may be, if you can get your hand on the formulary or the list of drugs that's covered for your plan, you should take this with you to the physician's office, okay? That way, whenever he's getting ready to prescribe you new therapy, he can look through your formulary, a list of documents, a list of drugs, and tell you and know which he can prescribe without any hassle. That does not mean he may not prescribe you something that needs a prior auth, because that's totally fine, but at least the provider knows and sets you up for success by saying, hey, I need to prescribe you Linzess. It requires a prior authorization. I'm going to send it to the pharmacy. You won't be able to pick it up today because I need to do the prior authorization, so at least you know what to expect. Number 2, what I would tell you to do is, if the doctor's office and the insurance company are set up for what we call real-time benefit check. And what that means is, in the EHR, the electronic health record, some insurance companies have a tool already set up in that connection where the physician can prescribe the medication, do a real-time benefit check to see if that particular prescription is going to be covered, or if it's going to have a prior authorization, quantity limit, etc. And it will tell him, say, hey, you can prescribe this, but it's going to require a prior authorization for Ms. Jones today, okay? So just inquire and ask, do you, doctor, have real-time benefit capability with my insurance company while you're writing me this new prescription drug? And then the formulary, real-time benefit, and then number 3, what you want to do is you want to be in the know and follow up with both your physician and with the pharmacy. So basically, this is just being followed up and educated on what he actually wants to prescribe. So you want to say, okay, doc, this is the prescription that you're giving me. What do you want me to use it for? How often am I supposed to use it? How long am I supposed to be on therapy? Those things are things that you're going to need to know, whether it's a prior authorization, whether it's a quantity limit, or step therapy. And we'll get into this another time, but say the doctor tells you he wants you to be on that particular drug for 6 months, and you go through the prior authorization process and they only approve it for 3 months. Then you already know that the physician is going to have to get that prior auth extended, because he originally told you, because I told you in the step 3 is to be educated, that you're going to need to be on it for 6 months, okay? So these are just some tips to make it better for you to be more informed and know what to expect when you actually get to the pharmacy counter, so you can have a better experience. All right, so to wrap up the prior authorization, remember, managed care is the healthcare delivery plus financing. The financing of said healthcare delivery is usually done, or given, the task is given to the insurance carrier on behalf of your employer group, if it's employer insurance, Medicare, whoever that entity is that's footing the bill. In doing so, they put out different utilization management techniques that are always, number 1, clinically based, and then number 2, which is going to be most cost effective. One of those that they use is prior authorization. Prior authorization is simply a set of clinical questions that we're asking the physicians to go through. And once they go through those questions and it meets the clinical criteria, then you get approved for the actual therapy. If you're at the pharmacy counter, you want to make sure that you're asking the pharmacist or the technician or the cashier, what does the reject message actually say? Does it say it's not covered? Does it say it's prior authorization, so you know exactly what you're dealing with? Number two, you want to call the insurance company when you get home. Do not take for granted that the pharmacy said, yes, I faxed something over to the physician's office, because unless the physician's office picks up that fax and actually does something with it, you're going to be waiting a very long time. So you want to call your insurance company to validate what the reject is, see if there's any other medications you can take that do not require prior authorization, and then you want to call your physician's office and fill him or her in on all of that information. To avoid getting to the pharmacy counter and being shocked, you can do these 3 steps, where you can take your formulary or your list of drugs with you to your provider's office so he knows what is covered for you, how it's covered. You can ask him, do they have a real-time benefit check system where they can actually send the claim on your behalf, like a test claim, to see if it has any utilization management edits. And number 3, you want to follow up with all parties involved and be educated on how you're supposed to take that medication, how long you're supposed to take that medication, so that you can make sure that once all the steps have been approved, you have what you need. Hopefully you found this helpful, so that the next time you go to the pharmacy counter, I know it's going to be frustrating, I know it's going to be aggravating, but at least now you know what to expect if it is to occur.